Hey guys, NJ here, and we're back with some kind of final thoughts on the new Taranis QX7 and a little look at the interface and how all that works. If you haven't had a look at my part 1 video, please do go off and do that, because we have a look at the internals, what's changed compared to the X9D, which is obviously incredibly popular, what's been improved, generally how things are laid out, and also how to change the throttle depending on whether you're mode 1 or mode 2, and adjust the gimbal tensions. So do go off and have a look at that. So one thing I will suggest, I'm going to do a video on how to upgrade the firmware on this guy, and also what was important to me, certainly having received this particular unit from outside the EU, is how to flash the internal module. This one actually came with the FCC firmware, which is fine for everywhere else in the world except Europe. I'm here in the UK. I need to be on EU LBT. Now, it's not a problem whether you get either unit. Whatever unit you get shipped, you can flash to either version of the firmware for the internal module. It's not difficult, straightforward process. What I will say is that when you get your Taranis, one thing that will help with a lot of headaches is making sure you get all the drivers installed before you start messing around with getting things on and off the SD and messing around with writing firmware to the Taranis, etc, etc. So this little tip is simply make sure when you plug it into your computer via the micro SD port, that when you plug it in like this, with it completely off. The computer, your Windows computer will install one driver. You put it into bootloader mode, and the way you do that, once you've done that, disconnect it, put it into bootloader mode by holding the trim tabs in here at the bottom and powering it on. That will go into bootloader mode. When it does, you plug it back into the computer, a second driver will install, and then finally power the Taranis, the Taranis on in its normal configuration, with not in bootloader mode, not off, just power it on normally, plug it in again to the computer. There'll be a third driver installed. It is important to get all of those in and all up to date, and then it should be a far easier job of getting it to talk to your computer. So with that said, I will do a separate video on that. For now, let's just have a look at what's going on with this when we turn it on. So this is now a digital button instead of a slidey switch, which I prefer, and I'll tell you about why I prefer that later.
Welcome to OpenTX. Throttle Warning.
Okay, so one of the nice things here, now the X9D does this too, it won't start transmitting from the internal module or external module, whichever you're running, if everything isn't at its safe position, armed off, not motors armed and with the throttle down, etc. It's complaining about the throttle because it's off the bottom, but it gives you a little red light there, which is just a nice little thing to have. So we'll go ahead and do that.
Disarm motors. Angle mode.
And you can see straight away that's gone into the correct configuration. The Taranis is happy and we've got a blue light. So that's a nice little touch. In terms of the software, this is still in beta, the software for this. It was when it shipped and it still is now, but it's getting better all the time. And the thing to point out here is they've actually done a really good job, because we've got less screen real estate than we did on the X9D. And I thought that would be one thing that I would feel kind of a little bit, I'd miss it, and to be honest with you, I really don't. They've done such a nice job of how they've laid this out. It's different enough to make it work for this screen size, but familiar enough that I'm not lost or any of it feels different at all. It's very intuitive, and it's all been laid out very well indeed. So kudos to the guys that are continuing to work very hard over at OpenTX to get that better and better. So obviously now we've got the page, menu and exit buttons on the left, and then this is just the best addition ever. No more spamming the plus and minus buttons on the Taranis. You've now got this lovely rotary encoder here. That rotary dial is wonderful, and then the center is a push button, and if we go into the menu here, you can see everything. I've only got a couple of models set up on here at the minute. One of them obviously my GT200, which is what we've booted up into. You hit the page, 2-page across, and then you can see, look how much quicker it is to move up and down the menu, especially when you're going to be working more vertically than you are laterally, because of the way the screen is laid out here as opposed to the other one. So being able to just go up and down like that is Fabulous. We really like that. Everything else in here is exactly the same as the X9D, and I will tell you now, if you really want to understand how this works, and it's very logical and it's really quite brilliant, go to Painless 360's playlist on the Taranis X9D and watch all of those videos. It will really clear you up on how the Taranis works, and everything in here that you see on the Taranis X7 will be almost identical to what you're seeing on the X9D. For instance, on the outputs page is a good example of this, whereas before you would work kind of directly on that one page on the bigger screen of the X9D. Here, if you want to adjust anything, instead of scrolling across to adjust them, you press edit and it's actually a separate screen where you work vertically instead of laterally to make those adjustments. But all of those things are the same. In many ways, that's actually quite a nice easy way to deal with each individual parameter. Now, something you might or might not have immediately noticed, this speaker is considerably better. It's no more, how can I say this, it's not more bassy than the original speaker. It seems to me to sit in roughly the same frequency range and response range as the original Taranis speaker. However, it does, the perception is that it's considerably more clear and it does feel louder, and when you max out the volume, the voice that you, if you're using a voice pack and whatever sounds you have coming out of there, they don't distort like they did on the X9D. It might be that it's actually the same speaker and they've just gone and applied a very good compression or EQ'd the speaker to make sure that it doesn't fall into that territory where it might distort, but the speaker is definitely better and clearer, and I'm really happy to report that. And let me just play you some examples of the speaker clarity there. So I have an arm and disarm motors notification here that you can hear when I flick this switch.
Arm motors, disarm motors.
And if I bring that volume up,
Arm motors, disarm motors.
and then like 3/4,
Arm motors, disarm motors.
you can hear
Arm motors, disarm motors.
it is really, it just stays so much clearer than it did on the X9D. There's definitely none of that kind of really horrible distorting sound, so they've done a great job making that sound. I don't feel the need to upgrade this speaker, whereas I did in my X9D. So yeah, that's a really good thing. And a quick tip for you guys, if you do want to actually assign the S1 switch to be a volume, you might find there's times where you're working at home and you don't want this to be absolutely blasting out, whereas at the field you might want it very loud. This is one good use for the S1. I'm actually in the special functions page here, and if you take one of those special functions and you set this to on, this first parameter here, because it could be absolutely anything, you know, it could be a switch, for instance, SA I've got there. So what we'll do is we'll just scroll all the way until we find on. Might be all the way the other way. There it is. So we set that to on, we move across, and then from this menu you select volume. When you move across to here, the easiest way to select any switch on the Taranis is actually just to move it. Again, if we moved something else, it would change to that switch. So we want the S1, so I just roll the S1 around, and then you can see it selected it. And then we go over and we tick it, and now you can hear we have that.
Arm motors, disarm motors.
You can actually run that as a volume. And if you're running music, I like to have music playing. Sometimes when I'm flying, then that's again quite a useful thing, that you've got kind of an overall volume adjust. The other thing I've done there in terms of that switch, calling out arm motors or disarm motors, is done in a very similar fashion. You scroll down to make set up another special function. And as before, you just flick the switch in the position that you want it. So in this case it was SF in the forward position. Move across, I set to play track. Move across, I then pick ARM from the Amber pack, and you will need to download the sounds pack onto an SD card. In terms of SD card, you don't need an incredibly big SD card, you know, like a 4 gig will be fine, depends how much music you want to put on there. But the actual Amber pack, sound pack, which has all these voices, like, you know, this kind of thing.
Acro mode. Horizon mode. Angle mode.
That contains all of those things, and countdowns and RSSI callouts, all the things that you want. You'll need to download the Amber pack onto an SD card into the sounds folder, but I'll go over a few of those bits on the PC for you, just to point you in the right direction, and also show you a very good page with lots of resources for this particular transmitter on it. I'm going to put a link in the description to this page. It's a great pool of information on all things FrSky Taranis QX7. It's been set up by the RC Group's member Datos, and kudos to him. This is just an absolutely brilliant page. Just about everything you could want is here to know about, and it's a very active thread. There's lots of things constantly being updated. Most importantly, you have some great review videos. You have links to FrSky's website, to the product page, user manual, etc. And then if you scroll down further, you will have the current firmware links as well, from the OpenTX, specifically the 2.2 RC10 build that is being worked on at the minute. As I said, this is still in beta, so it's definitely two links you want to keep an eye on right now, as it's being updated fairly frequently. Another thing, if you go a little further down, just briefly talk about it, is there's lots of things discussed, notes about improvements. Datos himself has actually done a really good guide on how he painted his Taranis a different colour. There's a section here on how to fit your own charging jack if you want to run a rechargeable battery. There's just absolutely everything here you can need, so really useful page. I would head over to that and have a good thorough read. And just quickly going back to the button, and the other reason I like having a digital button there instead of the just the clunky slidey button, is that you can't accidentally knock it, which is also another nice thing. If you want to power this off, simply pressing it won't actually do it. You need to hold it down, and you'll see what happens here when I do. You get a little haptic feedback, and then it's off. So that should just about do it. There isn't a lot more to say other than I'm really warming to this transmitter. For the price, it's incredibly hard to beat. There are going to be some M7 gimbals coming out for this, which will be the Hall sensor gimbals. Now, personally, my advice to you is at least use the standard gimbals until they wear out and the centering becomes bad. There's no need to just... These gimbals are perfectly good enough. They feel great and they work. I would wait until these are starting to go, and then rather than replace them with the same, spend, you know, the $20 a gimbal and get the Hall sensor ones, because the extra resolution and the precision of them is definitely makes them a worthy upgrade. Or if you're impatient, a bit like me, and you just can't wait and you want to slam them in, then of course you can. But even with those taken into account, we're still talking about like 140 for this with a set of Hall sensor gimbals. I mean, it's such a compelling package. It is really got everything that the bigger brother does, minus a few switches and some trim tabs. I really like the layout. In terms of one other thing I should point out, it is physically a little wider apart, but I don't know why. I did see people say to me, oh, the sticks are further apart, so I did actually check the distance between the centre of each stick, and they are near as damn it on exactly the same between this and the X9D. I think there's 2-point-something millimetres in it, in that these are 2-point-something millimetres wider apart. It really isn't anything you feel. I think if people pick it up and feel like there's kind of a slightly wider feel to it, it's because there's more material to this side of the stick. But that is just how they have worked out the ergonomics. I haven't got particularly big hands, and I find it absolutely no problem in either pinch or thumb to operate this. And as I've mentioned in my other video, I actually really like the way this thing feels in the hands. The last thing to mention is the weight. It does come in a good 200 grams less than the Taranis X9D. I think it was 736 I think I got with the battery installed. So yeah, it's a very respectable weight. Feels solid, good construction, good internally, and the software really is very straightforward, logical, and easy to use once you've got your head around how everything works, or becomes very intuitive once you see how the programming works on this. As I said, head off to the Painless 360 website, YouTube channel rather, just to have a look at those. And you'll really be getting your head around how this whole thing works very quickly indeed. Okay, that just about wraps it up. Thanks for watching, guys. I will be doing some sticks videos of me using this with some freestyle stuff, because I have been asked to do some sticks videos before, so this would be a nice opportunity to do it. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.